Hi everyone, welcome back. Since my previous zipper video was so popular, I decided to do another zipper tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to put a zipper anywhere. This is also called an off-seam zipper or an inset zipper. While this method does create a functional zipper, I've mainly used this method to create interesting design details on clothing. These two images show how I used two off-seam zippers to make an interesting design detail on a pair of jeans that I made. Once you understand the basics of how to sew in this kind of zipper, you can use it in lots of other creative ways on your garments and other sewing projects. For the purposes of this video tutorial, I will be inserting this zipper into the middle of a piece of muslin. If you are going to put an off-seam zipper on a garment or another project that you are sewing, it's best if you put the zipper on the flat pattern piece before you attach it to anything else. An off-seam zipper would probably be the first thing I would do after cutting out the pattern pieces. It will be much more difficult or even impossible to add the off-seam zipper if the garment is already partially or fully assembled. The first thing you need to do is take a piece of tailor's chalk and mark a line just below the zipper stop and place another line just above the zipper pull. Next, use a ruler and measure the distance between the two chalk lines you just marked. Write this measurement down so you remember it. In my case, the measurement is 8.5 inches. Next, we will figure out measurements for an additional piece of fabric we need to cut. Add 3 inches to the measurement between the markings on your zipper. In my case, this comes to 11.5 inches. This will be the length of an additional piece of fabric we need to cut. Your length measurement may be longer or shorter depending on the length of your zipper. The width of the additional piece of fabric we need to cut will be 3 inches, which is 1 inch on each side of a 1-inch zipper tape. If you need some additional clarification on how I came up with these measurements, please drop a comment below and I will get back to you soon. Next, I need to cut one additional piece of fabric and one piece of interfacing using these dimensions. For the additional piece of fabric I'm cutting, I would normally just use the same fabric as the fabric I'm sewing the zipper to. But if you need to use a different fabric from your garment, just choose a fabric that is stable and woven. Next, I also need to cut a piece of interfacing using the same dimensions. Typically, I keep mid-weight fusible interfacing on hand, and that tends to work well for a whole variety of different applications. Now I have cut one additional piece of fabric and one piece of fusible interfacing that are 11.5 by 3 inches. Now let's head to the ironing board and fuse the interfacing to the piece of fabric. If your fabric has a right side and a wrong side, fuse the interfacing to the wrong side of the fabric. Next, finish the edges of the fused piece of fabric using your method of choice. This could be a zigzag stitch or serging, but in my case, I'm going to use a faux serging stitch on my sewing machine. For the purposes of this video tutorial, I am using contrasting thread because it's easier to see on video, but in your case, matching thread is probably going to look best most of the time. Next, we need to place a few markings with chalk on the fused piece of fabric. With the inner facing up, place your zipper as best you can in the center of the fabric. Place markings on the inner facing that are in line with the markings on the zipper. Next, remove the zipper and use a ruler to extend these lines across the width of the fabric. Next, mark a line directly in the center across the length of the fabric. This would be 1.5 inches from the edge, which is 1/2 of our 3-inch width. Run this marking between the two previous markings on your fabric. Next, we need to mark a line on each side of the center line. Make each line 1/4 of an inch away from the center line. Lastly, we need to place 2 triangle markings like I'm showing you here. These markings will all make a lot more sense in a moment. All the markings we just made indicate cut lines and stitch lines for making the window to insert our zipper. Next, we need to place our additional piece of fabric with the markings on our garment or pattern piece where we want the zipper to be. This is the part where we will want to be really careful on the placement. After you get the position exactly where you'd like it, it's probably best to use some pins here to keep it in place before we head to the sewing machine. The box I'm about to trace out with my pencil will be the line that we will be stitching at the sewing machine. At the sewing machine, stitch directly on this line all the way around the rectangle. I did decrease my stitch length slightly to a 2.0 length. Sink the needle and pivot at the corners. Once you have stitched all the way around, overlap your starting stitches by a small amount. Now that we have the box stitched out, we need to cut out a window for the zipper. You can get your cutting started on the center line by using a seam ripper. You can use fabric scissors or small, sharp embroidery scissors, like I have here, to cut the rest of the length of the center line. Cut until you reach the point of the triangle on either end of the line. Next, cut out the triangles as I'm showing you here. Carefully cut directly up to the pivot corner of the stitching, but be careful not to cut through the stitching. Next, we are going to head to the ironing board and pull the smaller piece of fabric through to the other side of our garment. We are basically creating a window with finished edges where we can insert the zipper. This step will probably take a lot of fussing and ironing with steam to get the fabric just right. These images show what you should have after pressing. Try to pull the fabric on the interfaced piece so that it pulls just to the inside and doesn't show on the outside of the garment. The next step for me is to use one of my all-time favorite sewing tools, which is wash-away seam tape. Truly, this step is optional, but I do think it works very nicely to keep the zipper in place during stitching. Plus, during washing, the seam tape will completely dissolve anyway. I'm applying the seam tape to the top and bottom edges of the window. Pulling off the paper will reveal the adhesive of the seam tape where you can stick your zipper before we head to the sewing machine. Flip your fabric over so that the right side is facing up and carefully place the zipper inside the window like I'm showing you here. It's worth taking your time here to make sure that the zipper is perfectly positioned inside the window before we head to the sewing machine to stitch it down. A little bit of pressure with your fingers will help adhere the fabric to the zipper with the seam tape. Now we want to carefully stitch around the zipper very close to the edge of the fabric. I used a slightly longer than normal stitch length, and I also used the normal sewing foot on my machine. You can use your zipper sewing presser foot if you think that will work better. Sink the needle and pivot at the corners. As you come all the way around the zipper, overlap your starting stitches by a small amount. And that's all there really is to it. Admittedly, my stitching around the zipper isn't 100% perfect, but I did use contrasting thread for the video. But if you match the thread to your fabric, it will probably look 100 times better. I hope you enjoyed this video sewing tutorial, and if you found it useful, I hope you will like this video and subscribe to my channel so that you are notified when I come out with new releases. As always, if you have any additional questions, please drop them in the comments below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Do you have a suggestion for a future sewing video? If so, I hope you will drop that in the comments below as well. That's all from me. Happy sewing, and I will see you in the next video.